G'day, ZiggyD here, and welcome to Chapter 4 of the Path of Exile Survival Guide. This time around, we learn to resist the elemental dangers of Rayclast, craft dangerous weapons of our own, and show down with the final boss of Act 1. Having defeated Brutus, we can now head over to Tarkleigh and claim a reward. We get a choice of 3 different skills here. 2 of these are movement skills, and 1 of these is a support skill. All of these are potentially useful, Shield Charge probably being the least useful of the 3. We're going to take Leap Slam in this case here, as it'll give us a great boost to mobility and a way to initiate fights. Rallying Cry is also a solid choice, that gives us some mana regen and increased damage for a short duration, or 8 seconds. I'll go ahead and grab Leap Slam here and chuck it in one of my red sockets. If you'd like to pick up Rallying Cry, you can also talk to Nessa and pick it up from her skill gem vendor page here too. So now that we're character level 11, we can actually purchase, find, and use resistance rings of various types to help mitigate some of the incoming elemental damage that we'll be facing. In this case, we're actually going to craft, however, using a vendor recipe, a cold resistance ring. Now, we can use this fireball, we can use any spare, if you found another blue skill gem, an intelligence-based skill gem, you could use that instead, and an iron ring. So we can now go ahead and sell this skill gem along with this iron ring, and we'll get back a resistance ring. Now, the amount of resistance on the actual ring itself can vary a bit as well, so you may, if you have a couple rings around the same level, you may want to try some different ones. For example, if I change this iron ring here, changes from 21% to, I got a perfect 30%. Now in this case, the resistance itself is actually a little more important, so I might actually just go ahead and use this one. So before we take the waypoint to Prisoner's Gate, it's not half bad an idea to also craft a fire resistance ring to use for this zone. Now it's not necessary, you're probably going to make it through it just fine, and my character already happens to have some fire resistance, so I'm not worried about it at all, since I found this Araku Tiki earlier, and I have a bit of fire resistance across some of my gear as well. There we go, we have some fire resistance on our gloves, so I'm sitting at 41%. I definitely don't need to craft myself a ruby ring, but you have that option as well. And it's a good idea in Path of Exile to be aware of what dangers you'll be facing in upcoming zones and to prepare for them. You can simply, if you have multiple resistance rings of different types, you can actually just swap them out as you go. So I know that I'm about to go into a zone that has some fire damage, then I can swap out my cold resist ring, because there's nothing in here that does cold damage in this very next zone. I can actually swap that fire resistance ring out. I'll just keep an eye out, and if I see any fire resistance rings, then we'll use that. But for now, let's head into Prisoner's Gate. I'm not really going to need it myself. Now in here, we'll be facing some more goatmen. Some of these guys will be using sparks, like you saw with Kuduku, and we'll also be facing off some of the Flame Hellions again that leave fire on the ground when they die. Hence the fire resistance there. But not really much of a big need for it. The damage that these things do isn't too high at this point if you've been trying to get, you know, all of your gear slots sorted out with a little bit of life on a fewer pieces. Now you'll notice in this zone that 2-handed mallets will start dropping at certain points as well. If you see one of these guys, it's not a half bad idea to pick one of these up. This can be equipped from character level 12, which we're not too far off, and you can see the base damage there is pretty significant. This is 15 to 30 compared to our 21 to 33 Tribal Maul that we're using currently. Now, the Tribal Maul is a bit better because it has the crafted mod on it, but a crafted mod on the mallet would actually make it better. So we'll hold on to that for now, and we may be able to craft that to improve our character further. Now, if we head along this road here in the middle of town, clearing out any champion packs or any large packs that we can with our ground slams, trying to group monsters up. If you continue running through them like this, they will group up as they chase after you. Clearing these guys out efficiently will eventually reach a bit of a dead end here. I saw a blink arrow drop. Now, I don't really have any use for blink arrow, and this will happen to you a lot of the time. You'll find skill gems sometimes that you can use, and you can feel free to use them. Other times you may find some that aren't particularly useful for you. You can save this for another character, or you can use them in those gem vendor recipes. A green gem, in this case, a dexterity gem, gives you a lightning resistance ring, red one being a fire resistance ring. So Piety's a little bit rude here, and she cuts us off. So we only have one choice, not being able to get through here. We need to find which side of the road contains this little ledge on it. We can see it here on the map. And then once you've discovered that ledge, you can actually head downwards, and we're going to find our own way inland exile. Wow, I just found another unique! I'm having pretty good luck on this character. I believe these are Ondar's class. These give a little bit of extra bonus damage. Some of that stuff is only going to trigger at certain times. It's an interesting unique to point out a mechanic here. This has 30% increased attack speed when on full life, so if my character hasn't yet taken any damage, I'll have a big attack speed boost. I have a little bit of lightning damage and accuracy, which is not too bad. That works all of the time. And then 20% increased movement speed whenever we get to low life, which is down below 35% of our life. So we can go ahead and equip these. This is not a bad sort of change over here. I probably will want to make sure I have all of my gems equipped. Now, I don't need Decoy Totem equipped currently on my character, but it will be useful for any bosses and things like that. It's a good idea to try and at least level it if I can in an offhand weapon so that it keeps up with my character's level, because even when you swap weapon types like this, if you have another weapon equipped in here and have it swapped off onto your character so you're not actually using it, gems will still gain experience as long as they're equipped on some piece of gear that is equipped to your character in some fashion. But for now, I'll just leave it off. It'll be fine. It'll be able to catch up. I'll see if I find any weapons with red sockets that I can equip. We can use our leap slams to initiate with enemies. It'll actually do a fair bit of damage if we hit with them. You can see we actually managed to kill some monsters there just by leap slamming on top of them. And it can be a little bit faster. You can use that whenever your Quicksilver is out of charges, for example. You can leap around packs like this. You can use a Quicksilver in between leaps. We hit level 12. We'll now be able to equip that mallet. So what I'll go ahead and do is I'll actually just swap this out. And then what we can do is we'll clear out the rest of these monsters first. I will need to craft this mallet in order for it to be better than my other weapon, but we can do that pretty easily. So from here, this one happens to have 2 red sockets. I'm going to go take my ground slam, and we'll swap these around. And then this weapon is not strictly better than the maul. It's pretty close at this point, but it will become a lot better if we go back to town and craft this mallet up. Now we can use an Orb of Transmutation on this to have a bit of a kind of a gamble to see what rolls randomly on the mod. Otherwise, what we can actually use is we can use a Rustic Sash to guarantee that we get some bonus physical damage. This is another vendor recipe here, and I hope you're starting to get a sense of the importance and the helpfulness of various vendor recipes in this game. They're very helpful to know. Knowledge is very much power in Path of Exile, and this is a fine example of it. I'll go ahead and unequip these for now. You'll notice what I did was I turned that belt there into a magic belt. That's essential here. We can either do this with a magic belt or we can do it with a rare belt. If you happen to have found a rare rustic sash that your character is not using, then you can actually use that one instead and it will be more powerful. For now though, a magic belt is going to be just fine. So rather than using the transmute on the mallet itself, what I did was I transmuted the belt, and we're going to trade it with a blacksmith whetstone and the mallet here, and we actually get a magical mallet back with a guaranteed increased physical damage modifier on it, which is going to be way better than our other weapon. So you can see here 22 to 43, we've got 21 to 33, and this one has faster attack speed as well. We can go ahead then, since this one only has a prefix, it's a heavy mallet, heavy being the prefix, which is the physical damage. We can actually use an augmentation if we have one to add a suffix, which will be a heavy mallet of something, probably of smashing. But we don't have any augmentations at the moment that I can use, so we'll leave that out for now. However, we have found ourselves a very nice upgrade, and I'll go ahead and equip that decoy totem in my offhand slot here, just so it can keep leveling until we get a piece of gear that has a red socket on it. I'm going to go ahead and stash this blink arrow because we may well use that for a later resistance ring recipe. Back in Prisoner's Gate now, I'm going to go ahead and allocate my next passive. I'm going to be heading through the rest of the melee damage here, 200 melee damage, attack speed, and we'll head into Barbarism. So let's go ahead and get that. So to navigate through this zone, we can just stick to one of these little outside walls here. You'll notice how I just stuck to the outside wall. You can pick any one of the walls and you're going to end up there just fine. But we have encountered the big red dot, known as the Burning Menace. This is the unique mob variant of this zone. He is a version of the Flame Hellions. Thanks to us having a huge amount of damage on our weapon, we're going to take care of him just fine. But he actually causes powerful ignites on your character, which is the burning damage over time effect, which can weigh your character down if you don't happen to have any regen, or if you have a smaller life pool or low fire resistance. Thankfully, I have a large life pool, a lot of fire resistance, and I also have a little bit of life regen, so we don't really have any problems with his damage over time effects. But the best thing to do is simply to try and kill him at range, and when he does die, just be careful because he leaves a powerful burning ground effect after. Now, that's much more powerful than the version left by the other smaller versions of the dogs, or the white mobs there. But we can go ahead and, you know, we're fine with our regen. We're not taking any damage at this point. In later difficulties, in later encounters with that particular zone boss, it can be substantially more dangerous, or if you're rushing through and haven't really got much life or any resistances or things like that. I actually found another sapphire ring. Do keep an eye out for those, because using 2 of those is even better. In fact, using another one of these later on, once we're dealing with a lot of cold damage, will actually be more substantial than having the 30 life from that ring just there. It will have a larger impact. You'll notice our decoy totem leveled just there, proving our point about the offhand weapon slot leveling. We'll just continue following the route here through this zone until we, we'll grab that chromatic, until we reach the end and the entrance to the next zone. Just managed to get an augmentation drop, so I'm going to go ahead and use that on my two-handed weapon here. I actually had a couple in my inventory. Did I simply ignore them before? I must have been blind. I augmented strength, which doesn't make a very great difference. Gives us a little bit of life, and not a great difference at this point. Something like attack speed would be far more desirable, but it's no worry. This weapon is still incredibly effective at this point. You can see how we are absolutely crushing things, even things like zone bosses and stuff, killing them in a couple of hits. And that's just by virtue of keeping our gear up to date. Keeping your gear up to date, being aware of when new weapon upgrades drop, is a big deal, and it will make your experience a lot smoother. So I knew that two-handed mail would start dropping at level 12 in that very zone, so we kept an eye out for one. And then using our extra game knowledge as well to craft that increased physical damage on top of the weapon, the relevant level weapon for our character, made a big difference to our overall damage, and we were far outpacing content at this point. So we now find ourselves in the ship graveyard. You can, at this point, if you haven't already, equip a sapphire ring, because there will be a little bit of cold damage in here. More cold damage will be present in later zones, but for now we can start getting some. Now you'll notice that some of these guys here, these new ghost encounters we have here, will deal some additional lightning damage. So if you happen to have found a lightning resistance ring, you can also choose to equip that. We will be dealing with some rowers in this zone as well, and since these are higher level rowers than the ones we faced before, they can hit a little bit harder. So again, make sure to sidestep their charges, just like we were in earlier zones. The layout for this zone can be incredibly random. You have a few choices. There are 2 exits we're looking for, as well as a bit of a side quest area. So sticking to either one of the inner walls or the water will at least see you to one of those exits, but we're going to have to do a little bit of exploration as well. I'm going to head just as far left as I can along this water for now, until we find a someone that we plan on talking to. We'll save the spoilers for now. We've got a rare rower to deal with here. We'll just make sure he's not going to charge us, and we'll kill any additional mobs that are surrounding him there. Taking those guys down, sidestepping the charge of that rower, and dealing with the rest of these guys. Now you'll notice eventually, you should hopefully come across a couple of things here on the map. We've come across a waypoint, and this will always be close to this sort of large area that will reveal itself on the map here. This is a significant area on the map, and it will kind of like pop into existence if you have this large overlay map enabled, or if you're looking at your corner map there. We are of course going to go and activate the waypoint, but we have someone to talk to up here. So we'll clear out this area just here. Then we're going to go talk to Captain Sigmund Fairgraves.
Frankly, I would have been surprised if you hadn't recognized me.
Now, Captain Fairgraves gives us a quest. He is stuck, he is marooned, and the only way he can make it out away from this place, this cursed place, is if we find for him his sacred All-Flame and return it to him. So, having received that quest now, we're going to search for a kind of like a crashed ship in this zone somewhere, with an entrance where we can head down. Now, since I reached a bit of a dead end in finding that location there, what I'm going to do is have to head inland. Now, this ship entrance will be, this sunken ship entrance will be somewhere in the middle of this zone. So we're going to kind of just have to move through until we can find it here. We just hit level 13. You'll notice these seething brines there use a skill called Cold Snap. It's kind of like an instantaneous area of effect nuke that deals a large amount of cold damage to your character and has a chance of chilling and freezing you as well. So thankfully to our cold resistance, we'll take the edge off of that and we won't take too much damage. Character also has plenty of life at this point, so it's not too much to deal with. We did grab that level though, so I'm going to continue heading through here, and that attack speed is going to give us a little more damage output potential against targets that we have to hit multiple times. But it's also, attack speed's also great for giving you extra mobility. There's a bit of a, you'll notice there's a bit of a delay when you do an attack before you can start moving again, and increasing your attack speed will lessen that delay, so it makes it easier to dodge incoming attacks from enemies. The easiest way to find this ship is to simply keep your overlay map up until the large ship with the orange entrance appears on the overlay map. So sort of just exploring, sort of sticking to the middle of the zone, just keeping the walls kind of in sight will eventually lead you to it, and we've found the ship graveyard cave here, so we're going to go head on inside. Now in this zone we have to move through a bit of a gauntlet of cold and lightning damage. We have some ice nova seething brines here, which these guys aren't too hard to deal with, especially if you have gotten that resistance ring equipped, so we're going to go ahead and take out those guys. and those guys will give us a nice boost of experience too. These guys here are slightly more dangerous though. These Cursed Mariners will actually use a skill called Flicker Strike that does a large amount of damage. These guys also have added lightning damage, which means if they get a critical strike, they have a chance of shocking your character. The shock status element, which is given by lightning damage or critical strikes with lightning damage, will actually cause your character to be more susceptible to incoming damage. You'll take 50% more damage from all other sources that hit you while you're shocked. So that can be a little dangerous if a bunch of those guys Flicker Strike you at the same time, as well as being surrounded by other monsters. So it's a good idea to sort of just bait out their Flicker Strikes. You can actually use a decoy totem to bait their Flicker Strikes, and if there's a large pack of them, especially a pack of champions, like a blue pack, then we can actually chuck that decoy totem down. We can lead with the decoy totem and use that. Unfortunately, it's on my weapon swap at the moment, so I can't really do that. But we have plenty of life and damage at this point, so we can sort of just work with that, work with our raw power. You'll notice that one of those crabs attacked me, and I was cursed. Some enemies will have curse on hit, and this one actually has vulnerability, which is one of the more dangerous curses in the game. This causes us to take increased physical damage from hits, so anything that, like a rower charge, that deals a large amount of physical damage will deal even more damage, and that can be very, very deadly later on. It also causes us to take more damage from damage over time effects. Any damage over time effect, that includes burning ground, it includes poison, anything like that that deals damage over time will be increased by vulnerability as well. So some of the scarier things in the game, like puncture with big physical hits, will actually get double affected by vulnerability. The initial hit will be scaled by the increased physical damage, and then the damage over time will also be scaled by the vulnerability too. So it can be particularly dangerous. Once you reach the end point of this zone, there'll be a few little dead ends. You will encounter Stranglecharm. Stranglecharm is the unique boss of this zone, and she has a slowing aura here. We can notice reduces our character's movement speed. This is represented by that sort of purple aura. It's not too common an aura, and it's not too dangerous if you're just dealing with it by itself, but it can prevent you from dodging other attacks from other enemies. Now she's basically just the same as all of these other mobs here. Uses cold damage, similar attacks, very easy to take down, so we'll just go ahead and use our AoE to clear up any of the other seething brines around her, and then use our single target to finish her off. After we manage to take out Stranglecharm, we can click on the slave girl here, who we found has unfortunately died, but she was carrying the All Flame, which we can go ahead and retrieve. Now, through the magic of teleportation somehow, well, we find another exit, I suppose. It actually leads to another section, so we won't take the same exit that we left through. We can actually just take kind of a shortcut here, and this will lead us somewhere back near the actual entrance of the ship graveyard zone. So from there we can just, since the area will already be explored, we can actually just head out until we get to this waypoint, assuming we did that zone in short order. It's only a short zone, so it shouldn't have taken too long. Now we can take the All Flame up to Fairgraves here and turn it in, but unfortunately for us, we have been betrayed. Fairgraves, the power of the All Flame has twisted him into an undead being, and he decides to, instead of thanking us, take us out. Now, Fairgraves use a couple of different attacks here in addition to spawning a bunch of skeletons, which it's a good idea to use a Quicksilver and get out of there to avoid those skeletons. It summons a bunch of little floating skulls that have a short duration, so you can simply outrun them whenever they appear. They will eventually disappear, or you can actually use any AoE ability to kill them as well. Now, they do a little bit of damage if they stack up on you, as well as taking other damage from other attacks. Now, an interesting thing about his Spectral Throw attack, where he's throwing his weapon, is right at the end there, where you'll notice it spins on the spot for a moment. It will actually deal additional damage to you. You can get hit by it multiple times, so it's a good idea to either stand in melee distance or out range of it, but try not to stand in that sweet spot just there, which is basically just there. You can see how we took 3 hits and actually quite a bit of damage, even though we are pretty tanky at this point. So the key thing is just to use your AoE abilities to take out the Summon Raging Spirits, and then use the Molten Strike whenever there's no other enemies up for you to attack. So having taken out Fairgraves, we can claim our rewards, any loot that he dropped. Now I did find some chain boots here. We want to check these to make sure if we find any movement speed. No movement speed, but we did find life and dual resistances. It has less life, but resistances overall are a bit more important up until you reach the resistance cap, which is actually 75%. So, since we're not at resistance cap on any of these guys, I'm going to prioritize the resistances, and I'm going to swap this over just here. Thankfully there's 2 red sockets as well, so I can go ahead and replace those. Now, although Fairgraves was a scumbag and didn't give us any reward for claiming the All Flame and returning it to him, having killed him, we can go back to town and talk to Bestel in town, who will give us a reward anyway, so we don't get left high and dry. we'll grab that Book of Skill, and if we right-click on the Book of Skill, it'll actually give us a free passive point. In addition, this is like an extra passive point in addition to any levels we've received. So we can go ahead and use that there, and I'm going to head over towards Barbarism with it. So once we've claimed our reward, we can take the waypoint back to the ship graveyard, which will return us close to the Fairgraves area there. And what we want to do then is follow one of these external areas. It'll either be the water or it'll be one of these cliff edges until we find the exit to the Caverns of Wrath. I think I can hear something a little bit interesting off in the distance. What is that I hear? Who is that? It looks like we've encountered some brine rot raiders present in this zone. We should have no trouble taking these guys out. Looks like is there actually like a bit of a battle going on over here? I heard so many sound effects going off. We'll go ahead and take out these guys. There's actually a pretty large pack of them here, so I'm going to use my AoE ability to try and take them down as much as I can. I'll pick off any weakened ones with my Molten Strike, taking a fair bit of damage. Whenever you're taking too much damage, then the easiest thing to do is just to back off and use one of your flasks until it takes effect, and then you can re-engage in the fight. We use our single target here. We've actually got a bit of an archer here. Is using Blink Arrow, which teleports the archer and then leaves a copy. So there's a bunch of copies here, which can be a little confusing, but just try and pay attention to where he ends up and follow that one. Managed to kill the Brine Rot Soothsayer and got myself a bit of a reward as well. Take out that Shockwave Totem, which deals physical damage and area of effect, and claim any rewards from the fight. Not a bad little Brine Rot Raider fight there. Couple rewards too. I'll go ahead and check these gloves. We ended up with a bit of bonus damage, not too much else. Ondar's class was probably a little stronger at this point for us. So eventually you'll reach a section that's kind of like this giant dead whale or sea creature or something. Guess it's not really a whale because it appears to have arms. I have no idea what it is, but it's kind of terrifying. Thankfully, it's just a skeleton. But we can pass through its body into the Cavern of Wrath. So once we've entered the Cavern of Wrath, you'll notice that there's a waypoint right here at the entrance, very conveniently placed for a trip back to town, and to retrieve a quest reward for having reached the Caverns. I'm gonna go ahead and talk to Nessa over here and she'll give us a quest reward. We have a couple choices here, Sweep and Static Strike. Now both of these are viable abilities for you to use on this character. You can use Static Strike, which you hit an enemy and then after a short delay there's a lightning explosion in an area. You can give that a go if you're interested in that skill. I don't really like that skill too much myself because you have to actually click directly on monsters. I'm going to take Sweep though, which is a recommended ability for this particular character. If you're following along on the run, I'm going to take this Sweep ability and we're actually going to use this now instead of Ground Slam. One of the advantages of Sweep is actually allows us to be much more flexible with gear as well. This works with any two-handed weapons, so we can actually use this. We don't need to use mallets. We can, if we find a sword or a two-handed axe, and we can actually use those instead. So I'm simply going to swap out the Ground Slam. Now you can continue leveling Ground Slam in an offhanded slot if you'd like I have just there, or you can chuck it away in your stash, or you can keep use it if you use Sweep for a while and determine that you don't like it as much as you like Ground Slam. Then you can continue using Ground Slam. There's a lot of flexibility on this character that I planned for you guys for this survival guide. Now keep in mind, if you haven't found any weapon upgrades just running through any of those zones, then you can always check the vendor. The vendors will keep fairly level relevant gear for your character, so things like, at this point, a Wood Splitter level 13 is fairly relevant. The gear is a little bit randomized and it refreshes whenever you level up, so if there's no gear there that's useful for you, then you can get the rest of your level that you have left to go, then you can come back and check again. If you can find any nice gear with like 3 linked sockets like this one here, 3 linked red sockets, I'm actually going to pick this one up. Although this has a little bit of life on it, it doesn't really have much else, and it's only a small amount of life. I'm going to take this, it's a higher amount of flat armor, but those 3 linked sockets are actually going to be very helpful for us. Now what we can do here is we can swap this out. If you have any spare transmutes, you can go ahead and transmute the helmet as well, or any other 3-linked piece of gear that you find. What we can do now that we have a 3-link is we can do 2 things. We can either link our main skill Sweep, our AoE ability, to Added Fire and then to another support gem. You can link multiple support gems to any active skill, or you can link multiple active skills to any one support gem. So we have a couple options. We can link Sweep to Added Fire, and then we can put in either Molten Strike or Leap Slam. Putting in Molten Strike would mean that both our single target ability and our area of effect ability are both a bit more powerful. However, what we can also do instead is grab something like Life Gain on Hit, which would increase our survivability a great deal. So I'm going to grab this Life Gain on Hit. That's only 1 transmute there. And every time we hit an enemy with this, it gives us 8 life on hit. Now, because this is an AoE skill that hits many targets, then we can potentially get a lot of life back every time we attack an enemy. This will make us extremely tanky. Now, this also works quite well with Molten Strike too, because Molten Strike hits an enemy and then puts out 2 additional projectiles, or 3 projectiles, that then can hit the enemies again, and you can get multiple hits equals multiple sets of life back. So it's good for both of these things. And a great thing about the flexibility of being able to swap skill gems whenever you want in Path of Exile means that if we're about to fight a boss, we can simply swap Sweep out for Molten Strike. Then we have a much more powerful Molten Strike than we do a Sweep, and vice versa. So now I'm going to take that waypoint back to Merveil's Caverns, and if at this point, just a final reminder, if you haven't equipped any cold resistance gear, then now is a very good point to do so. I'm going to go ahead and just equip the 1 sapphire ring now, but we will keep this other sapphire ring aside for some of the later sections of this zone, which could be much more dangerous. Now, right off the bat here, I've managed to encounter something that's not cold damage, and that's because this is the actual zone boss of this zone. It is one of Merveil's daughters. It is the beautiful Amarissa, daughter of Merveil. Now, she deals a little bit of lightning damage. She uses a spark ability, which you should already be very familiar with, but she does use a new ability as well, which is Lightning Strike. Now, this is a melee ability, so you need to be near her for her to be able to use it, but then it shoots out a couple of projectiles as well, which deal damage kind of in a line. If you get hit by any of those projectiles that travel along the ground, you can take additional lightning damage as well. So you can kill her at range to try and avoid the lightning strikes if you want, and sidestepping her, because there's a little bit of a wind-up on that lightning strike, will work quite well. So I use my AoE ability there to take it down, but you can also use a single target if you like. She's not too much of a hassle, and you can kill her without really having any lightning resistance at this point in the game, though later in the game if you have no lightning resistance, and in later difficulties, so if you're coming back in cruel and merciless difficulties, where things deal a lot more damage, then having no lightning resistance means you'll take a lot of damage, and that goes for many things in the game. Go ahead and grab that ruby ring. I recommend at this point grabbing any spare resistance rings until you have, you know, at least 2 of each type, and that'll give you greater flexibility in your gearing as you move through zones. Now that's going to be a little bit handy moving to the next zone as well, for one reason which we'll go over in a moment. So I'm going to be sticking to the most outside wall here, just, you know, not getting into any of the little dead ends. But if we stick to the most outside wall here to the north, then we'll eventually make it through the zone pretty quickly. So eventually you'll make your way to the Cavern of Anger just here. Now at this point, I recommend swapping out either one of your spare rings or even your cold resist ring for a fire resist ring if you have one. Not absolutely mandatory, and I already do have fire resistance on my character, but I'll just go to prove a point how much damage we don't take from some of the fire damage things in here. In this zone, in addition to the mobs that we've already fought previously, there will be the fire unique boss, another daughter of Merveil here, as well as little squids that will actually explode. Now this boss is Ambrosia, daughter of Merveil, and she deals a couple of fire spells. She's got Firestorm, which you can see raining down on us there, which we've dealt with before, so you know how to deal with that, moving around her like that. And she also uses Fireball, which is a straight line attack, and a pretty simple spell. Not too hard to deal with, just don't stand on top of walls. That's the most important thing there. Fireball can actually hit, like if they hit the walls like that, the explosions can actually overlap, and that can deal a large amount of damage to your character, 3 times the amount of damage. If you're standing in the open, you'll only get hit by one of the fireballs, but if you're standing against a wall, you can be hit by all 3. So we're just going to keep moving around her and take her out using our sweeps there, or using our single target ability. So now that I'm moving into this life and elemental resistances wheel just here, we're getting some nice extra bonus resistances on the tree, which is going to help us out against a lot of the incoming damage. A nice double whammy of value there on that particular cluster on the tree. So same deal with this zone, we can just sort of stick to the most northern wall and follow that along, trying to avoid any dead ends. You'll notice that with sweep, what I'm trying to do is position myself in the middle of packs, and then use my sweep there to try and hit the maximum amount of possible enemies. I'm going to take myself some damage here, and I'll highlight the power of life gain on hit that I mentioned earlier. So you can see once we've taken some damage here, I'll use one sweep, and you can see our character almost gets fully healed from all of those little squids that we hit, each of them returning 8 life back to our character. This zone can be a little spooky. As you'll wander through it, you'll notice, you'll hear a ghostly sound whispering in the distance, "This way," which sets the scene for our next encounter. Once you start to discover all these piles of gold, then you know that we have come across Merveil's lair. Now at this point, before we head into Merveil's lair, I recommend preparing by equipping dual sapphire rings. Make sure your flasks are filled up, your life flasks especially, and you can equip your single target with its support gems instead of your AoE. I'll go ahead and put Molten Strike linked to added fire and life gain on hit. MERVEIL is the final boss of Act 1. She primarily deals cold elemental damage, so having high cold resistance on your character will mean the difference between a hard fight and a pretty chill one. Compare these two shots of one of her attacks, one with and one without cold resistance, and you'll see the difference in damage taken. At this point, in normal difficulty, with good cold resistance and flask use, it should be possible to simply face tank the majority of MERVEIL's damage, only backing off when incoming damage is too far exceeding your flask healing. Nonetheless, you should take this opportunity to learn and practice the mechanics of the fight, as she'll be much less forgiving in later encounters. In addition to her regular life pool, MERVEIL also has a small energy shield. This functions the same as player energy shield in that if she goes a few seconds without taking damage, it will recharge. This means that you must do your best to keep up sustained damage by avoiding attacks and aggressively attacking her in between. Spellcasters can use things like fire traps and flame totems to keep damage on her even when they need to drop back and make the fight easier. MERVEIL's first attack is a barrage of ice bolts. Each of these deal a decent amount of cold damage with the potential of chilling and freezing your character. Getting hit by one or two of these bolts won't kill you, but if you're caught off guard by the entire barrage, then it can be deadly. MERVEIL has an obvious telegraph to this attack, making it easy to dodge. She'll extend both of her arms outwards and then forwards together, swords pointing towards the roof before unleashing the barrage. There is also an icy swirl around her feet as she does this, but the movement of her arms is far easier to spot. This telegraph is almost a full second long, so more than enough time to begin reacting. Once you spot this, move either to the left or to the right of her. Even if your reactions are slow, so long as you have begun moving, you will avoid most of the projectiles, which is the key. Her next ability is the Ice Storm skill, which summons a hail of ice bolts in a small area for about 5 seconds. The same as the barrage, you don't want to be standing in this for longer than a moment, which means you need to be aware of the danger before it begins. There are two keys to avoiding the Ice Storm. The first is being on the lookout for the telegraph. MERVEIL will have another icy swirl at her feet, but this time she'll raise her swords above her head in an X shape. When you see this tell, start moving from your current location and you'll avoid the Ice Storm. The targeting is based on where you were standing when the telegraph started, so you don't need to move too far. The second strategy for avoiding the Ice Storm is to be aware that she will only ever cast one Ice Storm at a time. If the Ice Storm is currently active, then you know you have a period of time where you know she will not cast another, and you can attack freely. If there is currently no Ice Storm and you can't see MERVEIL to spot a telegraph, then simply keep moving until she casts it again, and you know you're safe. Keep in mind that she can use her other abilities during an Ice Storm, so you still have to dodge those. Her third ability is a teleport. This is fairly instant, so you can't really prepare for it, instead you have to react to it. While the teleport itself does no damage, you losing track of MERVEIL is a real danger. When she teleports, your immediate goal is to locate her so that you can continue spotting her tells and avoiding her ice barrages and ice storms. If you know which direction she has teleported, then try to move perpendicular to her to avoid her barrages that could come from off screen. Don't run directly to her in a straight line. Her final ability is to summon two animated weapons. The telegraph for this is to cross her swords in front of her and push them outwards. These weapons aren't very dangerous, but they will chip away at your life, forcing you to use flasks, so you want to deal with them as quickly as possible. Killing them also grants flask charges, so they can help you sustain in the fight. Once they appear, try to take them out at the same time as damaging MERVEIL with your area of effect abilities. Once you bring MERVEIL's life pool down to 0, she'll shed her false golden skin and reveal her true form, MERVEIL the Twisted. In this second form, she has a whole new set of abilities to contend with. The first of which is a regular Sea Witch wave attack. This deals damage in a narrow and short rectangle in front of her. It's easily avoided by sidestepping when she rears back and raises her little squid flippers. Her next ability is far more dangerous. MERVEIL unleashes a piercing screech that deals damage in an area around her. This damage ticks every 10th of a second and puts a stacking debuff on the character that reduces your move speed, making it harder to escape. Enough stacks of these debuffs can even bring your character to a complete standstill, making it nearly impossible to escape. Some movement skills like Leap Slam and Whirling Blades will work to escape this ability, but others like Lightning Warp that are based on movement speed will not work or will work poorly. Either way, when MERVEIL rears all the way back and opens her mouth, run directly away from her as quickly as possible. Her third ability in her second form is to call upon Geysers that rapidly deal cold damage to players within their area of effect. There's no real easy telegraph for these, but they won't kill you instantly, so just reposition in a clear area, hopefully where you can continue to deal damage to MERVEIL. Finally, she'll also occasionally call upon a large group of larvae reinforcements. Like with the animated weapons, you can take these out while damaging MERVEIL with your AoE abilities, and they'll also grant you flask charges if your flasks are low. Keeping calm in the second form of the fight and focusing on your position will see you to victory and to the end of Act 1.
curse is over, Siren. Rest with Hinekora, mother of the dead.
Once we've paid our final respects to the slimy carcass of Merveil, we can then head through her false illusions, and we now find out that all those piles of gold were piles of bones. We can head into the Southern Forests and into Act 2 of Path of Exile. And our entrance into Act 2 signifies the end of Chapter 4 of Path of Exile Survival Guide. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. That's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.